All right. Go live on Rockfin. And let's go ahead and get started with a new intro. Dooby-dooby-doo. 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 I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. Dooby-dooby-doo. 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 I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. Dooby-dooby-doo. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. All right. What's going on, guys? I had a busy day today. I don't know if you guys just saw, but I was actually just on Jimmy Dore's show at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So I'm doing a double show night tonight. Doobie-doobie-doo. All right, guys, welcome everyone to Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you are new, I want to let you know that Sabs podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Thursdays for the roundtable and Friday for the Sabby show. And you can catch me here Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday. Greetings. Shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, Rockfin, and Twitter. What is going on? Give me just a second to tweet it out because I apparently need to do that. Doobie-doobie-doo. All right. And Max will be here at 8 o'clock tonight. 8, a little after 8. All right. I want to go ahead and shout out people in the chat. What is going on, Lateef? Thank you so much for becoming a Sabby member. Big shout out. Whoop, 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 whoop. Shout out to Danny, who says, good job on Jimmy. Thank you so much, Danny. CBC voter says 13.4 subscribers will jump to new heights after Sabs was on Jimmy Dore today, probably this Thursday clip. Oh, wow. CBC's making predictions here. Shout out to Darker Visions Media, says Walker's entire literary career is rooted in the hatred and defamation of Black men. Ooh, this should be an interesting discussion tonight. What's going on, Kishi? Says, happy Wednesday, my best friend, dear Sabby. Shout out to Flyover, who says, hope everyone is having a good day. Greetings, Eric T. Red, who's a Sabby member, says, hey, all, Nina Turner has no class, LOL. Oh, boy. Shout out to Dana, says, I'm tweeting Sabby stream in a Twitter thread with Jimmy Dore and Max Blumenthal. Thanks so much, Dana. Shout out to Miguel, who says, peace. Greetings, Delthea, says, hello. Hi, all of you beautiful people. She's also a Sabby member. Shout out to Yipper99, says, happy humps day. Happy humps day. Greetings, Joe, says, hi, perfect people. What's going on, Petra Sprampus? Just saw you on Jimmy's show. Woot. Welcome. Shout out to Angela, who says, hi, everyone. Hi, Angela. Greetings, Zach Davis says, hey, Sabby, saw you on JD. You did great. Thank you so much, Zach. And shout out to Lawrence Johnson, who's a Sabby member, says, doobie-doobie-doo. Yay, Max. Greetings, Gamer and Ganja for Life is back, you guys. Hello, he says. Shout out to Andrew and thanks for the super chat. Says, oh, Max Blumenthal in the house. Yes, he will be here. And of course, shout out to Ashura, who says, I missed the opening of you on JD. He normally starts streaming at around 5K. Popped in where he was at 3.5K and a member named Gilfoy asked for your channel. So your appearance made a difference. Thank you so much, Ashura. And shout out to Little, who said, woo, Sabby is the best. What's going on, Jonathan? Said, hey, Sabs. Hello, everybody. Greetings, RIP George Habish says, Max is in the Goat? Oh, Max is the goat. All right. Shout out to Mary says, hi, Sabby, and all of you in the chat. So welcome, welcome all. I have some interesting stories tonight before Max comes on. I can go ahead and close this now. So what are we talking about tonight? This should be an interesting conversation. Here we go. Let me share. All right, guys, we also are going to have another censorship discussion for one of these stories. So tonight we're discussing Kim Iversen smeared, by the Daily Beast. What did they say to Kim Iversen? What are they claiming? We're also going to talk about Chris Hedges on Alice Walker ban. That should be an interesting story. And of course, Max Blumenthal will join later on. So let's go ahead and get started with that Chris Hedges story, because I'm not sure if everyone is aware of what's happening with Alice Walker. Now, lover or hater, I received an email last week informing me that Alice Walker actually is oops, my camera. I forgot I tilted that up. Okay. That Alice Walker is actually being censored. I'm going to get into that story in just a second. It's an email that was going around, and that drew my attention to the story. And that's how I saw that Chris Hedges actually wrote an article about this recently. I think it was actually the most recent article that he wrote. So I do want to go ahead and get into that story. So let's get started with that. Eric, don't let me forget the patrons. All right. Let me connect here. Okay. So this is from Chris Hedges, you guys. It's called Chris Hedges, Alice Walker, and the Price of Conscience. Listen to this. Alice Walker was disinvited to the Bay Area Book Festival after Zionist groups threatened to carry out protests. The public and presenters are complicit in her blacklisting if they attended. So here we go. And there's a picture of Alice Walker there. And of course, it says, "Thought police do not cross." So let's see what Chris had to say about this. There is a steep price to pay for having a conscience, and more importantly, the courage to act on it. The hounds of hell pin you to the cross, hammering nails into your hands and feet as they grin like the Cheshire cat and mouth brombides about respect for human rights, freedom of expression, and diversity. I watched this happen for some time to Alice Walker, one of the most gifted and courageous writers in America. Walker, who was awarded the Pulitzer Prize for fiction for her novel, The Color Purple, has felt the bitter sting of racism. She refuses to be silent about the plight of the oppressed, including the Palestinians. So let me come out for just a second. I got to comment on this. For those who are not aware, Alice Walker is famously known for her book, The Color Purple, which was actually a movie as well. In that movie, there's Oprah Winfrey, there's Whoopi Goldberg, Danny Glover's also in that movie. It's actually a big movie. Alice Walker, over the years, she has been very vocal, and some people don't like the things that she says. The comment I mentioned to you earlier, someone mentioned that they feel like she's been destructive towards like Black men. She's not for everybody. I'm just going to be honest with you. But I told you guys I believe in free speech. I'm not for censorship. And the way I see it is, if you don't like what she has to say, you don't have to read her work. You don't have to even attend this book festival, actually. So let's go back into this story. Whenever I come out with a book or anything that will take me before the public, the world, I'm assailed as this person I don't recognize. This is coming from Alice Walker. If I tried to keep track of all the attacks over the decades, I wouldn't be able to keep working. I am happy people are standing up. It is all of us, not just me. They are trying to shut us down, shut us up, erase us. That reality is what is important. Now, I do want to comment here for a second and remind you that it was just a couple weeks ago that Hedges was censored, along with Tara Reid, Lee Camp, and Abby Martin. So it really doesn't matter at this point how big you are. It doesn't matter if you're an award winning author or journalist. At this point, they are willing to shut up anyone. Anyone who speaks in a way that they don't think they should speak, and anyone who is preaching a narrative that they do not approve of. That is what is happening here. Now, Alice Walker has been very vocal about the Palestinians. She's spoken out multiple times for support for Palestine. Now, who have we also seen this happen to where they spoke out in support of Palestine and they were ridiculed? In fact, they were refused tenure. That happened to Cornel West. That is why Cornel West was denied tenure at Harvard, even though he met the qualifications, because he spoke out in support of Palestine. So let's go back in. The Bay Area Book Festival delivered the latest salvo against Walker. The organizers disinvited her from the event because she praised the writings of the New Age author David Icke and called his book "And the Truth Shall Set You Free" brave. Icke has denied critics charges of anti-Semitism. The festival organizers twisted themselves into contortions to say they were not charging Walker with anti-Semitism. She was banned because she lauded a controversial writer, who I suspect few members of the committee have read, the poet and writer honoree Fanon Jeffers, who Walker was to interview, withdrew from the festival in protest. Walker, a supporter of the boycott, divestment, and sanctions, this is also known as BDS, you guys. She's a supporter of that movement, has been a very public advocate for Palestinian rights and a critic of Israel for many years. Her friendship with Icke has long been part of the public record. She hid nothing. It is not as if the festival organizers suddenly discovered a dark secret about Walker. They sought to capitalize on her celebrity. And then, when they felt the heat from the Israel lobby, capitulated to the mob to humiliate her. I don't know these people. This is coming from Alice Walker. It feels like the South. You know they're out there in the community and they have their positions, but all you see are sheets. That's what this is. It's like being back in the South. Let's talk about banning people and banning books for just a second. So here we go. So this has been happening recently. It's been happening in schools, libraries. They're removing books that they didn't seem to have a problem with until recent conflicts abroad. I have to be careful what I say on here now, you guys. So now you have someone, Alice Walker, a proclaimed writer, award-winning writer. Now she's the target. I don't believe that books should be banned. I feel like I'm back in that movie Footloose when they were burning the books and said the kids can't read the books and they didn't want the kids to dance in the town. That movie came out in the 80s. It's 2022. Why are we going back? Now, you don't have to agree with everything that Alice Walker says. You don't have to read Alice Walker's books. But to tell someone that they cannot attend because you disagree with their take on foreign policy, this is a whole new level of censorship. Just a couple of weeks ago, they were removing people's YouTube channels. They removed people from RT. They have been removing people from Spotify as well. Lee Camp is one of them. Now they're trying to tell people what they can and what they cannot attend. Does anyone else see the big concern here? Does anyone else see the big problem that we're facing when it comes to censorship? This has gone too far. This is why when I say I'm pro free speech, I'm pro free speech. That doesn't mean that I agree with everything that someone says. But when you start to censor certain works of literature, when you start to censor certain topics, this is just the beginning of a catastrophe, because eventually it gets to the point where they don't want you to say anything. Look at how I have to censor myself when I'm on the show. Look at what happened to Jackson Hinkle recently. Jackson Hinkle was banned from YouTube because he was talking about a conflict abroad. They don't want us to say anything. So they pick here and there and here and there. And before you know it, it's going to get to the point where what can we say? I'm going to go to some of the comments and I'm going to go back into the article. I just saw one. Lauren, there is a reason freedom of speech is the First Amendment to the Constitution. That's a good point. Joe, yes, Arsenio Hall got blackballed for years just for having Louis Farrakhan on his show. I'm not sure if everyone is aware of that, but that's true. I don't know how old everyone is in the chat or if they ever saw the Arsenio Hall show. I was little when that show was on, but I remember watching Arsenio Hall with my parents. And I remember when he brought Louis Farrakhan on, and I remember my parents saying they're going to end his show now because they didn't want him to bring him on. Again, you don't have to agree with what Louis Farrakhan says, but are you going to kill someone's entire show because you didn't agree with the guest that came on? Thanks for the super chat, Delthea Simmons. Don't ban debate. If your worldview is so fragile that any idea that disagrees with it must be outlawed and hidden, you need a new worldview. Thanks for the super chat. That's a good point, Delthea. Good point. I saw someone mention Joe Rogan in the chat. I don't know what happened this time with Joe Rogan. So just letting you know. Linwood said, see, you can't ban according to the First Amendment. So what you're going to do is try to censor the people in the private sector, not the government sector. That's a good point. 1 second, guys. I think my computer's a little tilted. Okay, there we go. That's a good point, Linwood. Juliet said Arsenio Hall has some of the best interviews in the 90s. Yeah, he does. He does. All right, let's go back into this article. Chris Hedges goes on to say, banning writers because of books they like or find interesting nullifies the whole point of a book festival. Should I be banned because I admire Louis Ferdinand Celine's masterpieces Journey to the End of the Night, Death on the Installment Plan, and Castle to Castle, despite his virulent anti-Semitism, which even after World War II, he refused to relinquish? Should I be banned for liking Joseph Heller's Catch-22, which I've recently reread, and which is rabidly misogynistic? I'm sorry, you guys, I can't talk tonight. It's been a busy day. Misogynistic. Should I be banned for loving William Butler Yeats, who, like Ezra Pound, many of his poems I have also committed to memory, was a fascist collaborator? Should I be banned because I revere Hannah Arendt? I think Chris Hedges is really trying to get me through these names. Hannah Arendt, whose attitudes towards African Americans were paternalistic at best and arguably racist? Should I be banned because I cherished books by C.S. Willis, Norman Mailer, and D.H. Lawrence who were homophobic? We might as well sweep clean library shelves if the attitudes of writers we read mean we are denied a right to speak. This portion down here too. Go down here. Organizers of the festival attacked Walker for her poem, "It is Our Frightful Duty." They accused Walker of channeling Ick's alleged anti Semitism into her writing, as if Walker is unable to think for herself. The attack on the poem, which is gross misreading of its intent, exposes the lie that Walker's position on Israel and Palestine had nothing to do with her being disinvited. And this is the excuse, too. I do want to jump in and say that this was something Harvard tried to allude to about them not giving Cornell West tenure. They tried to allude to the fact that, well, these are the requirements and the qualifications that we have for someone to receive tenure at Harvard. Not every professor that, applies for tenure here receives tenure. This is a very competitive institution. Harvard language. But I think we all know it was because he supported Palestine. This happened immediately after that. Let's be real. Bryce said, typical, I figured this would happen. That 100 million talks, though. Juliet said, the point of writing is to say things that haven't been said before. You don't have to agree. Exactly. Don't forget to hit that like button, guys. That helps me with the algorithm. Lawrence said that Chris is certainly well read. When I think of some of the books that we read in school, I mean, did I agree with all the books, all the literature that we read, that I read in undergrad? I was broadcast journalism and English major. So I read a lot of books. I read a lot of books. Some of them I had to read multiple times because I was taking a different English class and they gave us the same work of literature to read again. And I'm like, at this point, I've read this book by 3 times. But this isn't the first time, I think, that Alice Walker has been under attack. I mentioned The Color Purple. That book actually received quite controversy. I told you I can't talk tonight. It was somewhat controversial for the time. And so was the movie when it came out. Because one of the things that I noticed in the movie The Color Purple, it wasn't just the racial divide. You got to remember, this was a long time ago when this took place. It wasn't just because of the racial divide. It was the class issue that occurred not just between white people and black people, but the class issue that occurred between black people. The Color Purple highlighted that. The Color Purple highlighted that when you had a character like Celie, even among wealthy black people, she was still looked down upon by those people, even though they're both black. And this is something I've told people before. A lot of times from black people who are wealthy, they're class loyalists first. And you see that throughout the movie constantly. It's like she's looked down upon. She's not taken seriously because she doesn't come from money. She came from nothing. She was really poor. And then you have like the bougie Danny Glover's father in the movie. He's very bougie. He doesn't think she's good enough for his son. And he's constantly like so nasty towards her. And that, I think that was the first movie that really opened up my eyes to the class issue that we have. Now, granted, it took place many decades ago, but we still have that problem today. Let's go back into the article here. Unfortunately, Miss Walker was not only promoted Ick's ideas widely on her own blog and in interviews, but they may have influenced her own writing. Now, this is coming from The Festival. Miss Walker's 2017 poem, It is Our Frightful Duty to Study the Talmud, encourages people to use Google and YouTube to follow the trail of the Talmud. As its poison belated wins its way into our collective consciousness, some of what you find will sound too crazy to be true. Unfortunately, those bits are likely to be true. A New York Magazine essay by writer Nyla Burton describes her reaction to Walker's support of Ick and this poem. This poem calls out these hate-filled religious texts, all of it, the Christian, the Jewish, the Muslims, even the Buddhists, all of it without exception. At the root, Walker reminds us in the poem that these texts have been used throughout millennia to sanctify subjugation, dehumanization, and murder. Slaveholders defended the enslavement of blacks by citing numerous passages in the Old and the New Testament, including Paul's letter to the Ephesians, were equating slaveholders with God. Paul writes, "Slaves, be obedient to your human masters with fear of trembling in sincerity of heart as to Christ." Let's go down here. Walker exaggerates this religious chauvinism and mythology. She warns that theocracies which sacralize state power are dangerous. In the poem, she highlights passages in the Talmud used to condemn those outside the faith. And the article goes on and on. I don't want to read the entire article because that kind of defeats the purpose of you reading this article. But Chris Hedges also has this on his Substack as well. But the point that I wanted to highlight here as well, this is the statement that comes from the festival. Our decision to disinvite Miss Walker had nothing to do with her position on Palestine, her voice as a Black woman writer, or her right to speak her mind freely. We honor all of those things. We also do not hold that she is anti Semitic. To be pro Palestinian does not mean a person is anti Semitic, just as to be Jewish does not mean that one is anti Palestine. Our decision was based purely on Miss Walker's inexplicable ongoing endorsement of David Icke, a conspiracy theorist who dangerously promulgates such beliefs as that Jewish people bankrolled Hitler, caused the 2008 global financial crisis, staged the September 11 attacks, and more. So let's talk about this for just a second. This is interesting. Again, I told you guys I'm anti censorship, I'm pro free speech. I don't have to agree with everything that's said. But I just feel like, who are they going to ban next? How are we going backwards in this country? 2022. How are we going backwards? I'm wondering if I should try to see if I can get in touch with Alice Walker. I wonder if she'll be willing to come on. I should try to do that. Bryce said, "Nah, Sabs, I like you reading. I hate reading. LOL." Oh, I love to read. She's Black said the establishment is slowly losing the information battle, so they are doing everything they can to hold on to it. I think that's what's happening too. I don't think they like to hear independent voices. They don't want people to look towards other resources. Gamer and Ganja for Life said Chris Hedges is great. I agree. I agree. Veronica said, at Eric T. Red, I sent, have you looked into troubled teen industry and accountability for Congregate Care Act and justice for Cornelius? I believe I saw information about justice for Cornelius. I'll have to double check the other ones. Brian said, Ick has been banned by the media, disparaged, made fun of. He supported, I can't say that on here, but in free speech. Oh boy. Juliet said, settler colonialism is so fragile. I'm sorry, you guys. My wheels on my chair keep moving. I need to get a chair that doesn't move. It's the truth. Bill Bradley. Bill Bradley said it's the same tactic liberals use with the right. Anti-Semites oppose Israel because they hate Jews. So everyone that opposes Israel gets painted the same way. Racists voted for Trump, so all Trump voters are racist. Same logic. This is the go-to tactic for liberals. Paint in broad strokes based on partial truth. That's a good point. Thank you for saying that, Bill. That's a good point. That's what they do. That's what they do. You ever notice, like, I noticed something whenever people talk about the military or they talk about American patriotism, more so in reference to the military, people tend to picture what that individual looks like, not realizing that the military is incredibly diverse. I know my dad was in the military. I was a army kid. I grew up constantly around soldiers. That's also the reason why I'm anti-war, because I've had those experiences. I know what that's like. So it's true. People tend to do this. They'll say, like Bill Bradley said, all Trumpers are racist. All everybody who supports Palestine is anti-Semitic. It's ridiculous how they just paint people with a broad brush that way, but it does happen. I do want to give a quick shout out before I go into the second story to people who are Sabby patrons. I didn't forget about you, buds. I didn't forget about you. All right. Shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. Thank you so much for your support. I really do appreciate it. All of their names are listed here. If you're interested, I have 5 categories: members, Sabbies, Sabsters, Sabinators, and the ultimate. Here are all of their names. Thank you guys so much for your support. And I have 2 newbies that I need to add to that list as well. And that's Jackie Papora and Mark Collins. And their names are also scrolling across the bottom of the screen. So if you're wondering, if you're new here and you're wondering who those people are at the bottom of the screen, those are the patrons. Right, Snowy Taco, patron represent. Whoop, whoop. Patron represent. Whoop, whoop. All right, let's get into this next story, you guys. Now, this is in reference to Kim Iversen. I don't know if everyone is aware of what is going on, and I don't know if everyone is familiar with the Daily Beast. I am familiar with them. One second. Someone tried to text me, I think. I don't even know who that is. I'll have to reach back out to that person, but I don't know who that is. Okay, anyway. All right, let's go ahead and get into the next story. So, Kim Iversen has been smeared by the Daily Beast. Where do you see this? Let me see if I got the right one here. Oh, no. Let me go to this one here. So they're trying to claim that there is trouble at The Hill, the show Rising, which Kim Iversen is on along with Ryan Grimm and also along with Robbie. Brianna Joy Gray was on there for a little bit. She was filling in for Ryan Grimm, but they definitely decide to come after Kim Iversen. This is what they said. Listen to this. So Kim tweeted this: trouble at The Hill? Actually, no, far from it. Sure, maybe there's a hyper liberal person, like in any organization, that tries to silence views they don't like. But as CNN Plus has shown us, people with those views aren't popular. Also, if the Daily Beast did a smidgen of journalism, we go in here, they know that my YouTube suspension was reversed and was met with an apology by YouTube. Also, I wasn't even on the segment that the Hill TV Live banned. But of course, they don't mention those things. It wouldn't support the narrative. So, what is she talking about here? So, let's go into the Daily Beast article because they did this. They did it. I'm sorry, but this is all on them. They even had the nerve to post it on Twitter. Trouble at The Hill. So let's go in here. Again, if you're just joining, this is coming from the Daily Beast. Confider. Everyone loves it until they're in it. Here we go. So there's Kim there. The Hill to die on. They're dramatic here. Just get ready for it. Staffers at The Hill have complained to management about one of the hosts of the DC's outlet's popular web show over her fringe views and misinformation. Who's calling me right now? Why does everybody want to reach out now? Call you back later. Sorry. Rising co host Kim Iversen brands herself as a tell it like it is, no BS broadcaster and spoke at this month's anti vax Demeet. Man, I'm bad today. If you're new, I'm sorry. And spoke at this month I gotta be careful what I say on here, defeat the mandates rally in LA and then raved about it on Rising. She was briefly suspended by YouTube last month for the 1-9 misinformation. And Iverson has further sparked uproar among colleagues for parroting Kremlin talking points about the country with the U and neo Nazis and seemingly defending the Chinese government brutal treatment of Uyghurs, for which co host Ryan Grimm confronted her on air. According to multiple sources at The Hill, who described her rhetoric as toxic and dangerous, numerous staffers have expressed serious concerns about Iverson to management. I want to highlight this here where it says numerous staffers have expressed serious concerns. Um, Sometimes in journalism, people like to exaggerate. You see, it's not actually interesting if you say one staffer raised concerns. So sometimes you may read an article that says numerous staffers raised concerns, and a lot of times it may just be one person. I'm sorry, but these things happen. It's true. This is what they do. So they try to find ways to make it more interesting. They'll embellish things here and there. So I'm sure if it was numerous staffers, Kim would know about it. Obviously, you can tell from Kim's tweets that obviously this is not a numerous staffer issue. She went on to say in her tweet too that she talked to Ryan Grimm about it, and he obviously wasn't one of the people. So, look, I think they're exaggerating by using the word numerous. Let's go back in. It's something that people do. And I'll tell you, hold on, one more thing I want to say. You ever meet someone or you know someone and they say, well, they said that they have an issue with it. Who's they? And then if you ask them, well, who are you talking about? Who's they? Oh, people. People have said that. Who are the people? Just people. Sometimes the people is actually that one person who told you about it. And sometimes the people is still just one person. Just wanted to throw that out there. Here we go. The complaints have gone above editor in chief Bob Cusack. One high level staffer told us, with senior people having taken their concerns directly to the outlet's parent company, Nexstar. Here we go. Kim is a conspiracy theorist, the senior staffer asserted. I think she's really bad news. In a statement to Confider, Iversen said her co-workers' feelings aren't a secret to her. Everyone has witnessed the disdain on air. And yes, I'm aware of the whining to management. This isn't news. Insiders further noted how YouTube suspended The Hill's account last month after it aired Trump peddling lies. And while Grimm and co-host Robbie Sov, I don't know how you say Robbie's last name, criticized YouTube's decision as maddeningly hypocritical, Hill staffers are concerned that Iverson's continued presence could result in further penalties from the tech giant. So I do want to jump in here because they bring up, and I covered this when this happened, they bring up that YouTube had suspended the Hill's account. Yes, that did happen. But what they leave out is that Kim wasn't on that episode. She had to tell people that herself. If we go back to the tweet, she mentions in the tweet that she actually wasn't a part of that episode. But they don't mention that in the article. They have to make it sensational, make it interesting for you. For people to go, ooh, ah, oh. So I'm sorry, but they should have mentioned that and they didn't. And I think they did that on purpose. This portion here, where it says Hill staffers are concerned that Iverson's continued presence could result in further penalties from the tech giant. Again, she wasn't present on the episode that was removed. So it just seems like to me they're just trying to stir up drama here. Going back into the article, comparing the Iverson situation with that of former Hill columnist John Solomon, whose questionable and conspiratorial claims about the country with the U underwent a thorough and scathing review of colleagues revolted. An insider lamented. I don't know what the attraction is that some people in our operation have to conspiracy theorists, but it's just not helpful. It's not a good thing. Let's talk about this for a second. I don't agree with everything that Kim Iversen says. I don't agree with everything that anyone says. Sorry, it's true. But I want you to know why I think they're going after her though. Kim has mentioned recently on the show that she doesn't know where she fits politically anymore, that she doesn't even know if she's still on the left. At one point, I on Twitter, she mentioned that she was gonna vote Republican. Then recently, she mentioned that she realizes that both parties are against censorship. So now she's not, going that way either. And she's also said that she doesn't really know what she should call herself politically now, right? So the problem is a lot of these networks, even some of the ones that are, independent, they don't really want to hear that. They don't want to hear that politically. They want you to pick a side. And not everyone's on a side. For those who don't know, Kim Iversen had her own show before she joined Rising. And actually, that's when I first heard of her. During Bernie's 2020 campaign, I found her channel. She was by herself, had her own show, just like me. And she was doing really well, like just with her own show. And she was progressive and she called herself a progressive and she was very like, pro Bernie. But her, like myself and a lot of other people, we've seen nothing really happen with the progressives that have been put into Congress. And we saw Bernie Sanders just leave his movement. So we don't have a political home. Like, we're politically homeless, right? So I still consider myself to be left, but I don't belong to a party. I don't even want to, and I've talked to this about this multiple times. Like, I don't even think it's worth it to vote in these national elections. Because again, like I've said multiple times, until you get the money out, they're really not going to do anything for the people. That's the biggest problem that we have. People who have that mindset, when you think about the show's brand, sometimes it just does not. They don't want that, right? However, in Kim's situation, she actually brought views to Rising. Let's all remember when Crystal and Sagar left Rising. There's a whole story about that. I'm not going to get into all that tonight. And they decided to start breaking points. Ryan Grimm came in. There was another young woman. I'm sorry, I don't remember her name. This is bad, but I don't remember. And the views weren't good, not compared to before. Some of the subscribers that were with Rising, they went and followed Krista and Sagar onto the set of Breaking Points and unsubscribed from Rising. When Kim came on, their views increased. Not to mention, she has gone viral with her radar clips from Rising multiple times. So it was very clear to me that people did like hearing something different. Something, someone that would come in and kind of spice things up and say, well, no, this is not right. This is not how it is. And recently I talked about this on my show where I played a clip of her and Brianna Joy Gray, and they were talking about the progressive movement. And there was something that Kim Iversen said that really resonated with me when she said that. I mean, let's be real. I think the energy is gone. I don't think it's there anymore in the progressive movement. She said that she doesn't know what she would call herself politically right now. And we are in a political game in this country where people want you to pick a side. They want you to pick a team. They don't want you to be the kid that no one picked to be on their team when you were in gym class in school. How many of you remember that? I remember that. I remember I was chosen, but I was pretty good athletically. But I remember there was always that one kid that no one picked. They don't want you to be that person because they see you as a divider. They see you as divisive. They don't want someone to come on to those larger networks and call out the bias and the corruption with both parties. They don't want people to hear that. Even if you remember when Crystal and Sagar were on Rising, Sagar had the right populist perspective and Crystal had the left populist perspective. Then you bring on Kim Iversen, and Kim is just like, yeah, I don't know where I fit. So I think some people don't like that. Now, she has been really good on foreign policy. I think that is something you should definitely pay attention to her about when it comes to foreign policy. Some people don't want to hear that either. But I think that that's one of the reasons why people might come for her. Again, I don't agree with everything that Kim says. I think Kim knows this. She's been on this show a couple of times, actually. But I think that people really do not like those of us that are like, look, this whole progressive strategy isn't working. They don't like that, especially people that had a large following, and she had a large following. So that's a big part of the problem. MJ said, I have been trying to split up issues when it comes to left right debate. For instance, cultural issues, economics, foreign policy. I think there is a huge disparity on culture, but not as much with econ and foreign policy. Good points, MJ. Good points. Um, yes, howdy friends. Max joining the screen. Cool. I love Max. Yeah, he's supposed to be here a little after 8. He'll be here. Daryl said Kim says a lot of messed up stuff. It doesn't mean that she's right or wrong all the time. I'm not a fan of hers, but who cares what I think? Oh, Daryl. I care what you think, Daryl. I care. So I am going to show you. There was one more part to this tweet that I do want to show you. Let's go back to that. Oh, I think it froze on me. Oh, there it is. Why is it not? Okay, there we go. I think my mouse is on it. Okay. So the fact that they put out an article about this it's just really interesting to me that they went that far. Listen to some of the comments, you guys, because these are the things I want people to hear. I watch The Hill religiously nowadays, and I'm from New Zealand. I know more about US politics and life than ever before. Kim, you are the reason I started watching the show, and I think you're amazing, but also love the whole team, Ryan, Robbie, and Brianna. Keep it up, guys. So there you go. That's one of the comments. Another one is, I stopped watching and blocked The Hill after Crystal and Sagar goodbye episode was hidden, but I would almost unblock and watch again now. I really thought maybe they were just on holidays and just kept waiting. Interesting. Interesting. I think I do have time to show you something really quick. Yeah, I do have time. I want to show you a clip from when Kim came on. There was something that she said in reference to Rising. It was in the very beginning, so this should be easy. Eric, I'm gonna pull this up on Tight VNC because I think it's just easier that way. If I know what I'm doing, Eric. Oh no, I can't paste in there, so never mind. I'll just do it on here. There was something that she said about Rising that I want you guys to see. Give me just a second. She was talking about the whole idea of being independent. And I want people to hear this, whether you like Kim or not. I think this is important for people to hear. Let's see if this is the part.
Stance was like super anti what happened, and very much it was, but his guest, I believe, was like, no, this is talk about it. And it's the same, even then with I think TYT and Hill and these other outlets, I do think they probably still have to toe the line on the narrative, though. I'm not sure. I don't know, but I would just assume that they have to, maybe they can have a guest that questions it, but that's like as far as that can go. I don't know.
That makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. I'm curious because like you were probably,
so then I've just been doing the independent thing.
Awesome. So I know I saw you on Franco's show. This was recently after a couple of channels from MCSC were demonetized by YouTube. I think all of them were hit the same day, the same time, something like that.
Yeah, February 2nd or 3rd of this year, actually. There was a big YouTube, they wiped out a couple of dozen progressive channels, mostly progressives. There were a couple of that were conservative, but most of them were progressive. And the issue was that they were all talking about, we didn't know why. So YouTube didn't ever say why, but it became clear that what they all had in common was that they were talking about the January 6th in the event that happened at the Capitol. And so even if they didn't, like Jamal Thomas, for example, on Progressive Soapbox, he got demonetized completely, even though he was like very against what happened. And he was saying, this is crazy. And, so it didn't matter what your stance was. It just seemed if you were even open to the dialogue of hearing from someone, because I think what Jamal did was he had someone on his show to discuss it. And even though Jamal's stance was like super anti what happened and, very much, but his guest, I believe, was like, no.
So she's talking about what happened last year when a lot of these smaller left independent channels were demonetized on YouTube. They were talking about the event that happened on January, and she's going to bring it right back to notice how some channels were not affected. So listen to this.
This is what's going on. And there was, whatever the takes were. So YouTube just cracked down and pretty much got rid of anybody and everybody that even was open to having the conversation about election fraud or the January 6th, anything like that.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's crazy.
One of the questions I had about that, though, because one thing I did notice that didn't seem to happen to some of the channels that I would say are on the corporate algorithm. That didn't seem to happen to TYT. Right. It didn't seem to happen to, and I wanted to get your opinion on that. Why do you think that they weren't penalized for doing the same thing that like Franco and Jamal did? Here it comes, guys. Listen to this.
Yeah, they get away with a lot more. So like, as you know, I've been on The Hill. And so now I'm, affiliated with them. I'm still independent. So I'm not an employee of their company, and I could part ways at any time and they can cut ties with me tomorrow if they felt like it. But yeah, they're all of the brands that are considered actual news organizations. They're totally protected from the algorithms. So they actually are assigned a person, and that person helps them, if they do have a demonetized video, they just call that person at YouTube. So they actually have an in, you know, I can't call anybody at YouTube. I don't have anybody there that I can talk. I mean, I have to just go through the stupid, you know, like if something's demonetized, I have to hit it and say, you know, request review and then hope that, and then, you know, and there's no like actual process of this. You just have to hope that person, whoever reviews it says, okay, green light. Right. So they do have an actual person that they're able to talk to on a regular, and that they do talk to on a regular basis. And yeah, they're just, you know, it's just like why CNN and Fox or any of them can have a discussion about it, even though, you know, they all kind of went in there was none of this was all bad. You know, they have a one narrative that they all have to follow along with, but they're allowed to at least talk about it. And it's the same, you know, even with, I think, TYT and Hill and these other outlets, I do think they probably still have to toe the line on the narrative, though. I'm not sure. I don't know, but I would just assume that they have to, you know, maybe they can have a guest that questions it, but that's like as far as that can go. You know, I don't know.
That makes sense. So you guys notice that? How channels like TYT, they actually have a person at YouTube that they can call, that they can talk to. We have no person. So if something goes wrong, I just have to submit a ticket, just like you would if you were at work and you submit a ticket to IT. You get like this generic response that doesn't really tell you exactly what happened, doesn't really give you details per se. But for like TYT, they are able to they're able to actually talk to a real person that can tell them exactly what happened. So that's important to note. So that goes to show you again with the smaller channels, we're kind of like fishing in the dark. Like, we really don't know. So listen to this as well. I think this is the part where she says that they're not really independent. Yeah, that makes sense. I'm curious because like you were probably, especially back during that time, I think you were the only female host on the left that I saw that had their own show. And what I mean by that is other women that I saw on the left as commentators, they were usually paired with the guy.
Yeah.
So like Crystal was with Sagar
Right.
and so forth. And but
Right.
you were
to ignore it and to just changed or whatever. But nonetheless, they're still in that indie zone. A relevant factor, really, that causes people to turn away from me or not like me or not want to, you know, really listen to me, or they don't want to take me seriously or whatever it might be, right? I think it's so hard to gauge that. So I just find it's best in life to ignore it and to just do our best and keep grinding away and not think about that.
That's a good point. How did you end up on Rising? Was this something that you always wanted to do, or did they approach you and you thought about it and said, I can do this in my show as well?
No, I never wanted to do. I did not want to do it. You know, I actually I was a big critic of Crystal and Sagar, not of them, but I would say I was a big critic of Rising, and and this actually kind of follows into why I ended up going and being on it, was because when they came on the scene as an independent creator, I found them heavily threatening to independent creators, right? Because you've got this establishment media company coming in and into the YouTube space, which is at that point dominated by independent media. And even though TYT had kind of gone sort of corporate, they at least started off like truly independent, right? And they built their success, and then they took the money in, and then things, you know, changed or whatever. But nonetheless, they're still in that indie zone. And then Rising comes along, looks really indie. Everybody starts to take to it and think, and what I really hated was that all of these other creators were like fawning over it. Like, oh, like, my gosh, like, oh, they're so great. Look at this independent, you know, show coming in. And I was like, that's not independent.
Did you guys hear that? This is what I was trying to tell people. So like The Hill Rising, you know, it is what it is, you know, props where props are due, but they're not independent. And I think that's important for people to know, because for the longest time when I watched that show, I did not know that. I thought they were independent, and they're not. So yeah, Bryce is right. Kim is on it. Boom. That's right. That's right. Listen to this. Listen to what she says about another one as well.
It's corporate media. And by the way, this is a mayday for everybody in independent media, because what we're now seeing is the infiltration of establishment media into the independent media space, looking like independent media, fooling the audiences. I had so many fights with my dad about this. My dad being a big watcher, as I mentioned, of indie media, and particularly progressive media. And he was the guy that would make his coffee every morning and sit there and watch Rising without fail every morning, right? And I would get mad at him and I'd say, you realize that you are ushering in the end, the demise of independent media, because every other media company will catch a clue from The Hill and they will create a show just like this, similar. They'll realize that they can't pump in their actual cable network show onto YouTube and make that work. It won't. And so what they'll do is they'll create these other shows. And from what I understand, it, correct me if I'm wrong, if you know, but I think Majority Report, isn't that one MSNBC with Sam?
What? I tried to tell you guys. I tried to tell you. Even Majority Report was affiliated with, I think it was Peacock, or she'll explain it. Here we go.
Sam Cedar?
Peacock, NBC.
No, Sam Cedar's Majority Report show on YouTube, I believe, is MSNBC paid for.
Oh my God. Well, that makes sense because he was a contributor for.
Right. I think that is that's their YouTube independent media show. Right. So I could be wrong. I'm pretty sure that's true. So to me, I was like, guys, mayday. Like these shows are growing big. They're getting these audiences. They're being promoted in the suggested video feed. We're not being promoted anymore. And instead, it's these establishment media companies that are pretending to be independent. And this is where we're at. So to me, it was, I was very critical of it. Still am to a degree, but I also think it's beyond that point now. And now it's almost like, the writing's on the wall, and those of us who are independent we have to face the music now. And so that music it's YouTube is getting rid of us. That's the way it's going.
Okay, I'm not going to play this whole thing, but let me try to see when I had this conversation with her. When was this? This is dated. Oh man. Oh crap, they don't show the date on the computer. Why is that? Where's the details tab? This is very strange. Is this because I'm using a different browser? How am I supposed to know the date of this now? I'm going to have to check the mobile app. Okay, well, comments say 7 months ago, which was, when was that? Who's really good at this in the chat? Eric, when was 7 months ago, you think? Look at the comments. Oh, that's right. It was a live stream. Let me see. Do they not even show? They show 7 months ago. They don't show the exact date. September. Okay. So this was back in September. So she was trying to tell people back then that they were already trying to get rid of people. And I just want to remind everyone, this is actually before Chris Hedges, Lee Camp, Abby Martin, Tara Reid, other people that we know of that have been removed. This was before that. She was already seeing these things happen. And if you notice, she mentioned that Majority Report and TYT, that they're protected. They're protected. I think she had a conversation one time too with Jamal Thomas talking about that, how certain ones are protected. So the rest of us are not. That's why I tell you guys, if you're following me here, make sure you follow me also on Rockfin and Rumble, because I don't know. I'm just being honest with you. I don't know. Yeah, it does, Miguel. It feels like it was just yesterday. So she was already calling it, and that's important to note. Okay, Max said he'll be on in a couple of minutes. Eric, do you want to jump on really quick and go through some comments? And I'm going to take a 5-minute break, please, if you're able to do that. Doobie doobie doo. Let me remove that. Yeah, because I think, Max said he's like, I'm still on Jimmy. I'll be here in a second. I'm like, okie dokie. Yeah, if you want to go through some of the comments, I'm just going to take a quick 5-minute break. Thanks so much.
Yeah, I thought he'd wrapped up on Jimmy a long time ago, but I was wrong. All right. How's everybody doing tonight? Let's see. Let's do a little adjustment there, a little adjustment there. We'll keep an eye out for when our Ms. Sabby comes back. Yeah, she caught me by surprise, but I got my good microphone plugged in. So, wait, is it working now? All right, let me check the settings. Make sure we got. Oh no. No, that ain't it. All right. Sorry, I'm just messing with settings here. That's the one. All right. Now we got the good microphone. You got to, with the StreamYard stuff, if you don't have your mic plugged in when you start up, you got to, if you plug it in after, you can get it to work, but you got to select it. Hello, everyone. Well, that was we had quite a day here with Sabby on Jimmy Dore, and then Max coming on and coming here. We're getting our good fill of Sabby and Max. Yeah, so I don't know what's going on with the super chats. I know we've had a couple of people at least saying that they're purchasing them and they're not showing up. I haven't seen one come up for a while. We had one come up early in the show, so. But I don't know what to tell you. I guess you'd have to take it up with the YouTube overlords. Let's see. I know we had here we go, a paid chat in Rockfin. Let me read that one out. Thanks, Dave Burt, for the tipped comment on our Rockfin. Dave writes, "Would love to get into a deep literature discussion with you and your fans sometime. Thanks for defending Alice Walker and centering free speech in the face of new attempts to Fahrenheit 451 our asses." All right. And I see Max in the background as well. Let's see. Yeah, Max, I'm just filling in until Sabby comes back. Max is going to be like, who the heck is this guy? Let me get rid of that. Put that over there. Read out the super chat. John Kemper, I'll give it a try, family. John Kemper, success with the super chat. So I guess it may be they're working via computer, but not working when you do them with a phone. It may be that. Let's see. All right. So we had that chat from Rockfin. We got Veronica saying still glad to support independent media. Yeah, sorry about that, Veronica. I know she was trying to put in super chats, and they weren't really coming through. Miguel, who the heck is this guy? I know, huh? Let's see. We had SM Dalman also saying sent one. It says sent, and then I get blocked out of the chat. Yeah, there's something going on. Ashura says to bring Max on. Max, do you want to come on now? Can you hear us? I don't know if he can hear us yet. He may not be connected. Let's see. Oh, Max says I can hear you. Well, give me a thumbs up if you want to come on now. He's ready. All right. We're going to let me clear this off. Bang, he's in. Let's do this view. Hi, Max. How's it going?
Pretty good. Was just on Jimmy Dore for like 2 hours, right after Sabs.
Did he wear you out? I was putting in the comments, don't wear Max out. We need him to come on our show.
Yeah. I think I need an IV at this point.
So I'm Eric. I'm usually in the background helping Sabby out here and there, but she wanted a little break, so I jumped in.
All right, so Sabby chose to go on vacation right when I...
Right, yeah. So Max is coming. I'm out of here. No, but I'm glad for this chance,
she
Max.
is.
There she is. Because I just wanted to say that I'm a big fan. I really appreciate what you do. I know a lot of people tell you that as well, but
Thanks.
I
Thanks.
just wanted to say that whether it's about the political stuff or it's about the other stuff that we can't talk about on here, on the YouTubes,
Well, it's
really
all
appreciate it.
political. I appreciate it. It's all political, but some of it is framed as a technical solution, and there's no debate is allowed. Everything's just, and then it's just flowed into Ukrainian flags flying over people's homes and Ukrainian flags being on monuments, or the Kennedy Center here in Washington. This great theater is now the color of the Ukrainian flag. And it's the same thing. It's like, it's not that we're choosing one side in a foreign war. It's not that we are siding with NATO. It's not that we're making a political decision at all. It's just, this is reality. And the reality is that if you support Ukraine, you are a virtuous person. And anyone who thinks otherwise does not exist in reality. They're a conspiracy theorist. So it's the same thing with anyone who questioned lockdowns, for example.
And the last thing I want to say is just, I remember the time it was last year when you went on Jimmy Dore and you guys started talking about the thing, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And I remember it was like, because it had been so long and no one was talking about it, and I texted my son and I said, they're talking about the thing and they're making sense.
Yeah.
All right, thanks for that. I'm out of here. Thanks, Max.
All right,
bye.
Great to meet you.
Likewise.
All right. All right, guys. My special guest tonight is award-winning journalist Max Blumenthal from the Gray Zone. Max, welcome back.
Good to be here. I got to let a cat out of the room, so give me 10 seconds.
All righty. It's been a busy day today, you guys. Busy day. Oh, Pat. That's funny.
All right, cat.
Welcome back.
Cat ejected. Yeah, good to be back. Caught you on Jimmy. Very high energy performance. I was like, it was a hard act to follow.
Oh man, I'm so frustrated, Max. Like, that's one of the things I want to talk to you about. I know recently you spoke to Rokana, and I just have to ask, like, where do you see this going in reference to progressives going into the Democratic Party? What's some of the sentiment that you've been hearing on the ground in DC? Because I'm in Massachusetts. Massachusetts is a little bit more progressive depending on which area of the state that you're in. But in DC, what are you hearing from people in reference to voting for progressives and putting them through the Democratic Party, especially for people like Rokana?
Well, I mean, I saw you talking about Nina Turner, and I just had this feeling when she declared her run for Congress. I was just like, no, this is like so yesterday. It just felt so played out. And her ad where she talks about how angry she is and everything, it didn't really feel sincere to me. And now, I mean, I just can't believe it's still happening. And I don't think anyone is really excited about it that I'm in touch with, but there are still so many people who still believe that the Democratic Party can be an avenue for progressive change, that it can even be a vehicle for socialism in America. And that's not limited to Washington, D.C., but, in Washington, when you come here and you want to do any of that, you immediately are changed, because you're incentivized to change. You're incentivized to become a Rokana, especially on foreign policy. And there's really very little room for challenging the imperatives of the national security state in Washington. And that's because you will have your character assassinated instantly if you touch the third rail. That's what happened to Tulsi Gabbard. I mean, Tulsi Gabbard was someone who was not a very controversial figure several years ago, but she had a lot of vulnerabilities that could be played on to assassinate her character, specifically within the left. And as soon as she touched the issue of Syria, the dirty war in Syria, the US actually arming al-Qaeda affiliates inside Syria, introducing a resolution to cut off the arms, which no one in Congress supported because for some reason it's controversial to oppose arming the organization that was responsible for the 9/11 attacks. That's when she was just destroyed. And now you see her kind of aligning herself with the political right because there's nowhere else for her to go. The left just completely rejected her. The Bernie campaign rejected her endorsement. So I caught Ro Khanna. I knew exactly what Ro Khanna was going to say and knew just because I know how the city works and I knew what kind of character he was and I'd seen him around. I always considered him to be a gigantic phony when he pretended that he was some kind of peace candidate. So I saw him go into a cafe on Capitol Hill, and I was like stalking Capitol Hill, looking for members of Congress to politely interview about Ukraine and the massive arms shipment that the US was about to deliver, which was going to transform this conflict into the most dangerous proxy war of our time.
Yep.
And I waited outside the cafe with him for him, and he came out. I questioned him, to his credit, he answered my questions and didn't just walk away. But his answers made him sound like a Reagan era neoconservative fighting the Soviet Union. And it was pathetic, predictable, and sort of infuriating, and really shows. I mean, if AOC had been walking down the street and she and I had caught up with her, you would have gotten a much more contorted response. She wouldn't have known what to say because she thinks that she has to cater to her, a lot of like anti-war and anti-imperialist people who are still duped by her whole image. But she also has ambitions in Washington. Ro Khanna, he doesn't care about the grassroots anymore. He's going full Washington. He may have national ambitions. He may see himself as the next Bernie Sanders on the national stage. But that really shows you where things are at. And none of them, whether it's AOC or Ro Khanna, can really articulate why we need to send weapons to Ukraine, except in neoconservative moralistic terms that they're standing up for freedom and democracy, which we know is not the case at all. So that's where we're at. It should be like a brick wall for anyone who's actually anti-war and who wants to get into the Democratic Party. They should just see this and be like, no, I'm not even going to play that game. But I still see it happening. I mean, I was just out in LA and I saw, there's some progressives running for Congress there who are trying to change the Democratic Party from within, running against some truly awful Democratic candidates. And, TYT's hosting them, and, the wheels of the squad they just keep trundling ahead.
Yeah, I think it's ridiculous. I thought it was interesting that you were asking him about his stance on war, because I remember at one point he said he was anti-war. And in your conversation, he said, well, yeah, I'm anti-war except for this situation and that situation. Yeah. I'm like, no, you're not anti-war.
Yeah, he's like, I was against the Iraq war, basically because it was an unpopular Republican war and Americans were coming back in body bags or with their legs and arms blown off. So it was politically expedient. But this war, the American public is propagandized into a state of mass formation psychosis. So I'm for it. It's a just war. It is a great war. He's calling it a just war. Where's the justice in arming the Azov battalion? Where's the justice in supporting Ukraine, which is assassinating, kidnapping, and torturing dissidents, when Zelensky has arrested his second most popular politician in the country, his top political rival, banned all opposition media, and formed all other media into a united news network that broadcasts 24-hour war propaganda? Where's the justice in that? What is the point of any of this? Where is the justice in destroying the American economy, depriving farmers of fertilizer, raising gas prices for working class Americans, and raising food prices, in order to show resolve in the face of Putin. What is the point of that? And, you know, despite the blitzkrieg of Clockwork Orange style propaganda attacking the cognitive abilities of Americans, more and more people are starting to ask those questions. And I think by the time Ro Khanna does, if he does throw his, you know, hat into the national ring, no one on the, you know, the critical part of the left will have any patience for him. I think they pretty much lost it already.
Why do you think people aren't asking Ro Khanna about his donations that he receives from Silicon Valley? Because I see, like, if someone like Ro Khanna became president, I am very worried about that, because I did see an interview that he had where he said, well, in reference to tech, I'm pro free speech, but at the same time, we need to limit what people say. And I was like, what? That doesn't make any sense. So for people who don't know, Ro Khanna gets a lot of money from Silicon Valley. His wife, if I'm not mistaken, also receives money from the military industrial complex. So
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious as to why Ro Khanna is still able to say that he's progressive, and why more people are not calling out where he's getting his funding from.
Yeah, Ro Khanna's wife has continued to make investment trades in General Dynamics, which is a supplier of 500-pound bombs to the Saudi military, responsible for one of the worst humanitarian crises in the world in Yemen. They're also making a literal killing in Ukraine now. So why haven't they made anything of that? They are. I mean, you know, it's out there. Realsludge.com, which is sort of a progressive publication that kind of supports the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, went after Ro Khanna on that. So it's out there. The thinking of people like Ro Khanna is that those of us who come from kind of a progressive mindset have nowhere else to go in the US. I mean, who else are we going to vote for? So why should they actually care about us? And that's the fault of progressives or self-proclaimed socialists, or the DSA, which has really functioned as a kind of outside, sort of an outside lobby for changing the Democratic Party. It's really it's functioned as a vehicle for changing the character of the Democratic Party, and it doesn't present any alternative to it electorally. So that's the fault of people. I mean, and the way the American political system is set up, it makes it next to impossible to have a real third party challenge. And where I think this country is at right now presents the opportunity for an independent challenger to the uniparty, the permanent war duopoly, the corporate oligarchic duopoly that controls both parties. There is space for that person, but that person wouldn't satisfy what we know of as the US left, because the US left is just it's in its own state of hysteria. It loves canceling people for not checking all of the boxes. It's not strategic, and it doesn't it's hated. Like its leadership, which basically is a bunch of media influencers and pundits and NGO types and academics, are hated by most normal people in this country, who are so fed up and infuriated with the establishment and with the war state, and have no appetite for foreign wars. But they hate that stuff on the left, and so many of them are going to the right, or they're just kind of checking out.
No, I've seen that as well. I'm glad you brought that up. Last week we were talking about this on this show. I was talking about the fact that, or actually a couple months ago, I was talking about the fact that I don't think there's any energy left on the left in reference to the progressive movement per se. I mean, Bernie Sanders did leave his own movement, but I predicted a couple months ago that the next time we see that energy in this country, it's going to come from the right, because they're together, regardless if people like conservatives or not. They're together, and they come together in numbers, especially when it's time to protest. And recently, Kim Iversen echoed that same sentiment on Rising. She said, I think that energy is going to come from the right. And I want to get your opinion about that because I know you were more familiar with the trucker protests. And someone had pointed that out to me in the chat. They said, FYI, the trucker protests. What were some of the things that you saw, like in reference to the trucker protest? Was it just like a right wing like movement, like some people are saying? Was it a mixture of people? And do you think that the next time we have that energy in this country, it's going to come from a different space?
Yeah, I agree with everything you just said. And the same thing in Europe, and the same thing in Canada. Like the right-wing Popular Party is challenging the establishment in a much more substantial way than the NDP, which basically is the establishment, functions kind of like the left wing of the World Economic Forum. I mean, they're just, as much as I can't stand which so much of what like the Popular Party stands for, they were threatening the Canadian center much more. You see the same thing across Europe. Who is leading the charge against NATO? With the exception of Jean-Luc Mélenchon in France, it's the right-wing parties. Who destroyed Jeremy Corbyn? He was destroyed from within. It wasn't necessarily a right-wing campaign. Yeah, the Israel lobby waged a very destructive campaign. It was basically like a foreign influence campaign to destroy Jeremy Corbyn, paint him as an anti-Semite. Yes, the national security state in the UK made an effort to paint Jeremy Corbyn as a Russian plant. But fundamentally, it was an attack from within the Labour Party, including from people on the left like Owen Jones or Paul Mason, who would, switch between supporting Corbyn and then amplifying the most hideous attacks on him. Or Momentum, the supposed grassroots movement that's sort of like the DSA of the UK. They would do like these anti-Semitism trainings for Labour members and then legitimize all of the attacks against Corbyn instead of pushing back. So he's done. Corbynism is basically a spent force in the UK, although I still really respect what he's doing right now. It just leaves an open field for the right to come in and push back against Brexit, which Corbyn couldn't push back against. And the US is reflecting, we see the same tendencies reflected in the US. With the truckers, like I went and hung out with them and interviewed them, and I still need to get this video up when they were in the DC area in Hagerstown. Mm-hmm. And, there would be these soapbox speeches late at night where everyone would gather there. And some of the rhetoric that I saw being used by their self-appointed leadership, which really turned out to be, I think, a failed leadership, which is a separate story. They were saying, we openly welcome, this is the language they use. We openly welcome the far right and the far left. And if it's not for us, the far right and the far left will have no free speech rights. And they, just like the Canadian truckers, were actually invoking kind of liberal values. The one thing that the truckers in the US wanted to do was end emergency law and restore the Constitution, because the pandemic has been a theater for imposing emergency law and extending it indefinitely. That should be something I would think progressives would support. Same within Canada. What did they want? To restore the Charter of Values, to restore individual and basic rights. The Charter of Values written by Trudeau's father, Pierre Trudeau, 1992. So they were fighting for what I would consider liberal or even progressive values. But what the organized left saw was a bunch of, big white guys with beards who driving big rigs, who are waving like fuck Trudeau flags, or, and some people have let's go Brandon flags, and they just saw the aesthetic of the right and decided that their job is to fight the right instead of to fight the real class enemy, which is the people who are imposing emergency law in Canada in order to seize people's bank accounts, who have locked down working class Americans, destroyed livelihoods, destroyed small businesses, driven people into destitution, caused record opioid deaths, abused the poorest and most vulnerable children by keeping them out of school and deprived them of their right to education and in many cases a free lunch. I mean, that is what that's what they should have been railing against, but instead they became what I saw as the lockdown left, sort of like the street wing of the Great Reset. And where are they now on the NATO proxy war in Ukraine? There aren't really that many anti-war protests going on. There isn't a lot of activity. So it really does feel like the kind of post-Bernie US left is just a spent force coasting on the glory of past struggles and nostalgia. And I don't know what it really has to offer at this point. And it's a real tragedy, having kind of come from those ranks.
Agreed. I think there's a question for you, Max. I'll go ahead and pull that up, Eric. What do you guys, Max and Sabby, think, since you are organizing a lot of people like me, a longtime tenant organizer in Boston? How are politicians / commentators / journalists like you? What do you think we should do with most Democrat political options off the table? What do you think we should do, given the best people have abandoned TYT and the squad and Groundswell? Max and Sabs. I'll let you go first, Max.
Why don't you actually go first? Because the what should we do questions are always tough for me. I'm just like a critic who snipes from the sidelines, you know.
So one of the things we've been telling people over to RBN, I think a lot of times like we focused on, if we look at the 80-20 rule, we've been putting 80% of our attention and focus into electoral politics and 20% maybe into mutual aid direct action, if even that. We think we need to flip that and we need to put 80% into direct action and mutual aid and 20% into electoral politics. And when I talk about electoral politics, I'm mainly speaking about the local level politics, things that you can do in your community, your neighborhood, your town, your city, your state, right? Because that's where you can actually implement change. So I've seen city councilors implement change that way, as well as ballot initiatives as well. Or if you do want to do electoral politics on the federal level still, I encourage people to vote independent or third party, because until you get the money out of the two-party system, they're not really going to do anything for the people. So at the end of the day, it all goes back to the money. Now, some people coming back and they'll say, well, what do you mean by direct action, mutual aid? Direct action, like the trucker protest that we were just talking about, the George Floyd protest. Like, we need to get people out in the streets and mobilize people in this country. And in reference to mutual aid, there's many organizations that you can donate to, but mutual aid is not just money. Sometimes it may mean like carpooling, giving someone a ride that doesn't have a car, babysitting someone's kids for free. I live in Massachusetts. It snows here. Shoveling snow for people who physically cannot shovel snow. So that's like a real thing, like helping people in your community. We gave $100 million to Bernie Sanders. We could have taken that money and put it in mutual aid. We could have actually helped people with that money immediately instead of giving it to a politician and hoping that they get in and do the right thing.
I just wondering if other questions, because I got to jump off pretty soon. So maybe I'll take one more after this and I'll just kind of keep it short. I mean, I agree with much of what you said. I'm very suspicious about mass protests in this country now, given the ability of powerful forces to co-opt them, particularly the security state, which I think was manipulating what became of the George Floyd protests to make it an anti-Trump protest, and was manipulating the right wing as well. I think Kenosha was the perfect theater to witness that manipulation. They wanted to create, it was through a strategy of tension. They wanted to create chaos in the streets to present themselves as the saviors from Trumpism, but also from the extreme left or Antifa. So like their narrative will be seen on Fox and MSNBC at the same time now, that BLM and Antifa and the Proud Boys are the real threat to stability in this country. And they put both of those groups on overdrive. So that's something people need to really be aware of. I think political education is really important, and it's in very short supply. And what we do, we use journalism as a form of political education. And we don't, whenever there's a candidate who presents themselves as anti-war progressive, I often immediately find faults with them that they don't seem to be very informed on issues of imperialism. They're very malleable, and they parrot a lot of rhetoric that gets thrown around from AOC types. I'm constantly disappointed with the kind of candidates that crop up. So I think it's important that
Agreed.
we work on grooming our own people the same way that the right wing is successfully done. And national politics does seem like a dead end at this point, but it doesn't mean that we should be anti-politics, certainly not apolitical. So local politics can be a ground for cultivating stronger national candidates at some point. And the national platform can be used in congressional races, even by an independent candidate, if they can get in the debates to put forward issues like opposition to imperialism.
Well said. There's one more question for you. Does Max think Force the Vote exposed the class divide on the left? What does he think about how the U.S. left's response to the Dems cheating Bernie? Thank you so much, Buckeye fan.
In a sense, I think it exposed the class divide. It doesn't mean that everyone who supported Force the Vote was from the salt of the earth, that they were like laborers who were working in a Chicago slaughterhouse.
Right.
But it just showed that they were fed up with the Democratic Party, that they were sick of being told we're moving too fast, that we're not there yet. And more than that, this was sort of the Force the Vote conflict was a war of YouTube influencers. And the divide there was between, I think, regardless of what class people come from among those influencers, those who were for Force the Vote didn't have the middle class mentality that I think most people that identify with the US left have, where they seek respectability and credibility, because respectability and credibility come from elite approval, the approval of people with credentials. And those like Jimmy Dore, for example, could care less about that. He's catering strictly to his audience, which is constantly growing and which is more and more difficult to define along a partisan divide. So I think Force the Vote was an important breaking point, and it really it showed what TYT was, and now it's fully exposed at this point. But there have been so many issues since then. I think the debate around COVID was far more important at exposing the class divide. Or the class sensibility.
Well said. All right, Max, I know you got to go. Where can people find you before you head out?
Well, everybody knows where to find me, but I just started a Telegram channel that I'll be updating more frequently at Real Max Blumenthal. And I do have a live stream, usually weekly at Rockfin, and it's mostly exclusive content, but I make it public a few days later. So check me out at Rockfin as well. And thanks as always for having me on.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Max.
All right, Sabby. Good seeing you.
You too. Peace. All right, Veronica, thank you for this super chat. Rokana only agreed to introduce the Accountability for Congregate Care Act because of a private meeting that he had with Carter Room about tech policy. I hope that more leftist media will cover it so that it doesn't get watered down. Oh, Veronica, I'll have to look into that. Thank you so much for sending that. Thanks for the super chat. I will have to look into that. Going to shout out a couple people before I head out. McGruff said Jimmy's favorite show is Sabby Sabs. Oh, McGruff. Oh, thanks. Thanks, Angry Progressive. Sabby, awesome job on Jimmy's show. Thank you so much. Thanks. Isla Joy. Anyone who's read the comments on Rising knows that Kim is the fan favorite by a mile. She's my favorite also. Thank you so much for that. Gamer and Ganja for Life said MSM and deep state oligarchs want to keep on distracting and dividing us. I agree. The Hugging Monkey 625 says people hate it when they can't control you. You're right. All right, Eric, any more comments on Rockfin before I head out? Everyone is texting and calling tonight. It's really interesting. Like while I'm live. Just want to make sure I don't miss any. Before I go. Yes. Okay. All right. Oh, I think that I don't know what I did. I'm getting out of here because I messed something up. See, you guys can tell I don't know how to work this. I don't know how to work and I don't know how to do it. Okay. Thanks so much, Roger, for the not super chat, the tip on Rockfin. There is a symbiotic relationship between mutual aid, direct action, worker co-ops, and ballot initiatives. Just like Yvonne Drago told Rocky in Rocky 4, I must break you, is exactly what we need to do at local and state local via the ballot initiative. Let's start passing BIs that abolish all political parties. Also, I have come to the understanding that the biggest impediment to progress is not the rich, but the suburbs. Oh, interesting. Thanks for that Rocky 4 reference. For those who don't know, I love the Rocky series. I love it. I love it. Maybe not that last one. Actually, Rocky 4 is not my fave. But anyway, I could watch like the Rocky movies like all day long. Really love it. And so thanks so much for that. Thanks so much for mentioning that. Cryptician said Sabby and Jimmy and all of RBN and Gray Zone and others all go together very well. Oh, thank you, Cryptician. Yeah, I don't know if you guys have never seen the Rocky movies, but if you haven't, you should watch them. Like you can spend like a weekend just watching, start from the beginning and just go through all the Rocky movies. And then you'll be like, Adrian. You'll get to see Mr. T. I think he's in Rocky 3. You'll get to see James Brown. James Brown, I believe, is in Rocky 4. Yes, because he sings Living in America. Living in America. Yeah. That's the best part about Rocky 4, I think, is that performance. The rest of the movie is just so compared to Rocky 1 and Rocky 2. I think those are the best ones. But definitely check it out. Check it out. All right, guys. For those of you who didn't get a chance to see it last night or didn't get a chance to see it at the beginning of the stream today, I do have a new intro. I'm going to play it as the outro for those of you who didn't see it. So have a good night. Keep up the fight. Doobie-doobie-doo. Sabrina Salvati. Doobie-doobie-doo. 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 I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. Doobie-doobie-doo. Salvati. Doobie-doobie-doo.